This past week in NASCAR had everything you could ask for: a dominant teammate making history, a driver publicly questioning his own level, a veteran speaking with unusual honesty about the reality of life in the garage, and one of the most destructive crashes of the season, turning Talladega upside down. It was the kind of week that reminded everyone why this sport never stays quiet for long. The biggest shock came at Talladega Superspeedway, where the Jack Link's 500 turned into complete mayhem on lap 115. Bubba Wallace was leading the race and looked completely in control at the front of the field. He had positioned himself exactly where drivers want to be at a place like Talladega, managing the air, leading the line, and giving himself a real shot at a statement win. But at superspeedways, control can disappear in a fraction of a second. As the field charged down the back straight, Ross Chastain closed in behind Wallace with a heavy push. The contact was enough to upset the car ahead, and Wallace was suddenly turned sideways into traffic. Once that happened, there was almost nothing anyone behind him could do. Cole Custer was caught in the middle of it, the pack was stacked up 3 wide, and the crash expanded instantly. Cars were spinning through turn 3, smoke covered the track, and drivers had no room to escape. In classic Talladega fashion, what began as one bad moment became a wreck that swallowed nearly the entire field. When everything finally came to a stop, 26 of the 40 cars had damage from the incident. Several major names were swept into it, including Joey Logano, Kyle Larson, Ryan Blaney, William Byron, Carson Hocevar, Ty Gibbs, and Daniel Suarez. It was the kind of crash that completely changes the mood of a race and leaves teams trying to salvage anything they can. Talladega always carries that risk, but even by its standards, this one felt especially destructive. Tyler Reddick did not escape cleanly either. He was tagged in that same chaos and later had another scare on lap 182 when a right front tire problem created even more trouble. But what made his day stand out was the way he still managed to recover. Despite the damage, despite the setbacks, and despite the unpredictability of the race, he fought back to finish 15th. It was not a flashy result, but it was another example of how strong his season has been. Even on a day that could have ended in disaster, he still found a way to leave with something respectable. Kyle Busch also found a small, bright spot in the middle of the wreckage. His team repaired the damage and got the car back into contention well enough to finish 10th, which ended up being Richard Childress Racing's best result of the season so far. It was not the kind of finish Busch measures his career by, but given the circumstances, it at least gave the team something to build on after a long stretch of frustration. After being checked and released from the infield care center, Bubba Wallace kept his reaction simple. He treated it like one of those hard Talladega moments that drivers know can happen no matter how strong they are running. On the surface, that response sounded calm and professional. But the reality is that Talladega represented more than just one crash for Wallace. It became another reminder of a much deeper issue that has followed him through the season. Bubba Wallace is not struggling in the obvious way people usually think of when they hear that word. He is not buried in the standings, and he is not having a season filled with complete failures. In fact, by many standards, his year has been solid. He has put together 5 top 10 finishes, 1 top 5 result, and he is sitting 12th in the Cup Series standings. For a lot of drivers, that would sound like a stable and respectable start. The problem is that Wallace is not being measured against the average field right now. He is being measured against the man in the other 23-second racing car, and that comparison has become impossible to ignore. Tyler Reddick has opened the season at an extraordinary level, piling up 5 wins in the first 9 races and putting himself on a pace that has not been seen in decades. When one teammate is turning every weekend into a showcase and the other is still searching for the final step, the pressure becomes internal as much as external. What made Wallace's recent comments so interesting is that he did not hide from that reality. He did not offer excuses, and he did not try to dress up the situation with generic optimism. Instead, he admitted that at one point he thought his own speed was finally reaching the level needed to compete near the very front. Then Reddick drove by him so decisively that it forced him to confront the gap again. That kind of honesty is rare, especially in a sport where drivers are trained to keep emotions controlled and public comments polished. More importantly, Wallace admitted that the success of his teammate bothers him because he wants it for himself. That is not bitterness. That is ambition. There is a big difference between resenting somebody else's success and using it as a reminder of what you still need to become. Wallace sounds like a driver who knows his team is improving, knows he has had competitive moments, but also knows there is still a missing piece separating him from the elite level Reddick is reaching right now. That missing piece is what makes the next few weeks so important for him. Watkins Glen is coming, and while it is not a track where Wallace enters as the obvious favorite, it is one of the places on the schedule where there is at least some reason for confidence. He has produced decent results there recently, including an 8th place finish last year and a 12th place run the season before. Those are not dominant numbers, but they suggest the track suits him better than some people might assume. Still, Wallace seems careful not to place too much faith in history. A good finish from last season does not guarantee anything now, especially on a repaved road course that demands precision, patience, and confidence under braking. Watkins Glen is fast, technical, and unforgiving when drivers overstep the limit. If Wallace is going to turn his frustration into a breakthrough, he will need more than hope. He will need execution, rhythm, and probably one of his cleanest weekends of the year. There is something compelling about where he stands right now. He is not talking like a driver who has accepted being second best in his own camp. He sounds like someone who is tired of watching the benchmark get farther away. That tension can either become a burden or a source of fuel. Over the next stretch of races, Wallace will have to prove which one it becomes. While Wallace's honesty centered on performance, Kyle Busch delivered a different kind of truth this week, and it may have been one of the most revealing interviews of the season. Busch spoke candidly about something drivers rarely discuss in public, what life in NASCAR does to personal relationships, and how difficult it is to truly be close with the people you compete against every weekend. His description of the sport was blunt, funny, and a little sad at the same time. He talked about the NASCAR world like a traveling community that is constantly together, always parked in the same places, always seeing the same faces, but never fully dropping the competitive walls. In Busch's view, rivals stay rivals. That line may sound harsh, but it also explains a lot about how he has approached his entire career. He has never built his reputation on trying to be universally liked. He built it on intensity, edge, and a refusal to soften the competition into friendship. That mindset helped make him one of the fiercest and most successful drivers of his era. But right now, his personality is not the biggest story. The real problem is performance. Busch enters this next stage of the season buried in 27th place in the standings, which is unfamiliar and uncomfortable territory for someone with his resume. For a driver who has spent most of his career expecting wins, title fights, and relevance, this slump feels heavier than a normal rough patch. It feels like a serious test of whether he and his team can still find a path back. Richard Childress Racing has already reacted by making a major leadership change on top of the box, replacing Jim Pullman with Andy Street starting at Texas Motor Speedway. Crew chief changes are never minor decisions, especially in the middle of a season. They signal urgency. They signal that the organization believes something has to change immediately, not eventually. Even if the move does not solve everything right away, it shows the team understands the seriousness of the situation. The Talladega result at least offered a modest sign of life. Finishing 10th after surviving crash damage was not glamorous, but it was useful. For a struggling team, rebuilding confidence often starts with simple things: finishing races, executing repairs, and showing that bad days do not have to become catastrophic ones. Busch still needs much more than that if he wants to turn his season around, but at this point, any momentum matters. Texas now becomes a key opportunity. It is not just another race on the calendar. It is a chance to see whether the crew chief change creates a new energy, whether the team can clean up the basics, and whether Busch still has the speed to fight his way back into the conversation. Nobody is asking him to win the championship overnight, but the pressure to show signs of a pulse is absolutely real. When you step back and look at everything together, this was a week that revealed three very different truths about NASCAR. Tyler Reddick showed what it looks like when a driver is fully in command of his moment, so strong that even a difficult race cannot completely derail the bigger picture. Bubba Wallace showed how hard it is to be close to the top without actually reaching it, and how mentally exhausting it can be to watch a teammate do exactly what you are still chasing. Kyle Busch showed that even veterans with legendary careers can find themselves stripped down to uncomfortable honesty when results stop matching reputation. And then, of course, Talladega reminded everyone that no matter how carefully storylines are building, one superspeedway crash can throw a grenade into the whole weekend. That is what keeps NASCAR so compelling. Skill matters, confidence matters, momentum matters, but chaos is always waiting for its moment too. Now the focus shifts forward. Texas offers Busch a reset, and perhaps the beginning of a response. Watkins Glen could offer Wallace a chance to turn frustration into progress. And Reddick, somehow, continues to look like the man everyone else is chasing. That combination makes the next races feel bigger than they might have otherwise. This is no longer just about individual finishes, it is about identity, direction, and who each of these drivers is becoming as the season takes shape. If this week proved anything, it is that NASCAR's most interesting stories are not just about who wins. They are about how people react when they are close, when they are falling behind, and when the sport forces them to tell the truth about where they really stand.